Okay, it's 3 o'clock and it's time for our session to begin. So welcome again on this special COVID-19 viewpoint series. Good afternoon, Mahesh. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon. Pretty good. Absolutely
Excellent.
great.
Excellent, Mahesh. I think, So good to have you again, Mahesh, in our COVID-10 special viewer value series. We have this special show every day from morning to Friday with subject matter experts from the financial world. This is our way of showing solidarity along with you and others from the financial industry. Welcome to the show, Mahesh, and all participants as well. We have participants who are directly on this session as well as from other social media channels. Mahesh Ramamoorthy is a regional managing director, APME with FIS, that is Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa with FIS. He has also worked as COO in Electra Card Services, Head of Consumer Banking Technologies at Barclays, Director IT at Aviva, and was also CTO of Development Cooperative Bank, or DCB Bank as it is called now. So, he has got everything that we need to understand from him, his views on the financial world. So, so our topic for discussion today is bridging the paper-digital divide in payments finance. Okay, so we will discuss with Mahesh a wide range of subtopics, including financial relief measures, migrant issues, financial aid to them, GTP payments, and many others. Our format for Q&A remains the same. Please type in your questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to get across to Mahesh as many as possible. We will also have an open round where participants can ask questions directly to Mahesh. Raise your hand and the back office will enable you to ask the question. So, since we met last, Mahesh, the pandemic continues to rage, and in India, the issue of migrant has taken a bigger dimension to tackle, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
In the pandemic, do you think India seems to have a better track record than other countries in faster and cheap transfer of pandemic relief money?
Well, I think good question, KK sir. I think the way I look at it is obviously the government has announced a fairly good package in terms of relief measures, how they've transferred the money. So I think the reaction from the government and the ability of the government to ensure that the money has reached the Jan Dhan accounts, I think that's great, and we've turned it around pretty well. So to me, has India reacted better? The answer is always yes. India, the government has reacted well. Obviously, there are some challenges that we can discuss as we go along. But I do say the answer to it is a big resounding yes. So I think we can do better. The government can do better. And as we all read in the reports, we do expect something more beyond the Jan Dhan today from a stimulus perspective expected later this week. So I think to be able to combine both in terms of how we deliver to the accounts plus the stimulus packages for the MSME and the SMEs, the various segments, is going to help us possibly alleviate some of the challenges that we currently have in terms of our business and hence the salaries.
Okay, that's great. So according to you, yeah, I think the Indian system has kind of responded pretty well, and what could be the factors behind this incredible, quick and secure cash transfers and other things that can happen?
I think the vision that originated from the government and Mr. Modi as well as his team, I would say way back about 6 years ago, has been fairly successful, where the push to have the Jan Dhan accounts open, the push to have the Aadhaar enablement, and to make sure that the Jan Dhan account, the Aadhaar, and the ability to link the mobile itself, so which means the bank accounts are pretty much traceable to where the money is going. I think that's been fantastic. So this push that came in has acted as a huge boon. which means now Aadhaar is penetrated pretty well. It allows you from a transaction perspective and the ability for the larger mass to have an account opened in their names has enabled that the direct benefit transfers can be made smooth, can be smooth. I don't know how successful we'll talk about it, but it can be smooth.
Okay. So according to the Trinity of Jam, that is Jandan,
Perfect.
Aadhaar,
Yes.
and mobile seem to be working wonders.
I think it's a great tool. It's a great tool. We should debate whether the tool is effectively foolproof or whether the debate is whether it is absolutely a Loctite or whether there are issues there. I think we can talk about it.
Yeah. So if you were to talk about the jam, because that's one thing is, of course, the cash transfers that take place to the migrants and other poor people. But a larger, if you were to look at jam, is that going to play a very significant role in the days to come?
It will. I would say it is, because if you look at it, at the end of the day, this is only a start point. If you look at JAM, both in terms of how the Jandan and account, the Aadhaar, as well as the mobile, to me, there are going to be larger usefulness of this when you link it to, in terms of utilization at the PDS stores, when you look at to utilization of across various other services that the government is planning to offer. Once you get there, I think eventually, as we start to see the benefits, is when you look at the direct benefit transfers, I would say the government will start to extend it beyond it, but only use these as vehicles to ensure that the distribution is more better. Okay. And the success. See, what's important at the end of the day, how do you ensure that the benefits are visible to the grassroots level? I think a vehicle has been established. How well the vehicle is run and how well the net result of it is felt is where I think now the government should look to concentrate. Okay.
So I think as we come out of this pandemic, I think relief for the poor is extremely important, and I think Jandan is an excellent way of getting money transferred to them. Has Jandan penetrated the way we wanted Jandan to penetrate, Mahesh?
I think if you look at the number of accounts that have been opened, I think the penetration has been fantastic. What is most important is to ensure that the account utilization is for the right purpose. So whether it is successful just by the sheer number of accounts, the answer is a big yes. Whether the participants are effectively the right participants and whether it is being rightly monitored, I think that's most important right now. I think that is an analysis that the government must embark upon to make it much more successful, I would say.
Yeah, right. I think, I also agree with you. I think Jandan has kind of penetrated. If I look at my own household, whether it is my maidservant or the guy who cleans the car, I mean, everybody has got a Jandan account. I do a kind of a direct transfer. So, from there, I kind of drive the point that perhaps Jandan has penetrated. I'm sure there is a lot more to be done, a lot more accounts to be opened, a lot more quality to be done across it, but in such a massive exercise, there's always many more things to be done. So Mahesh, I go to the next question to you is, if the transfer of relief money, and this is related to the exodus of migrants we had, okay? So if the transfer of relief money was effective, then why could it not prevent large exodus of migrants from cities?
So I think that it's a very prevalent question that's being very heatedly debated across in a lot of channels, a lot of social media circles. But to me, I break the problem into two parts. One is the effectiveness of, let's take one by one. So first thing is whether all the communication across in terms of the distribution has reached the rightful owner. That's very important, right? In terms of the very fact that, hey, the government has deposited an X amount of money into, if they have distributed over 10 lakh crores, The
Yeah.
most important thing is to say, how does it reach the right person on the ground? Is it the right person to whom A, it has been transferred, and B is, has that person really, does the person know that the money is actually in his account, and how does he or she be able to withdraw it and utilize it for sustenance or survival? I would say now survival, right? So to me, that loop back, I don't think has been firmly established. So which means if you look at a larger population who today are on the roads, now they have, what has happened is they have lost their livelihoods. They're pretty much daily workers who essentially depend upon their daily wages to be able to sustain themselves. They are not that educated enough to be able to understand that there is some relief which has come into their pocket. So I think the first and foremost is how does the government or the machinery that enables the whole subsidy and direct benefits transfer ensure that these people, the larger mass of these people, know that money has reached them, and do they have the mechanism to access it? See, what's important is at the end of the day, if you're depositing, say 500 rupees into a person's account, it's very important for that person to be told that there is money reaching your account, and B, that it is the right person to whom it has reached, and there is a way for which he can remove the money for his utilization. In a large section, I believe that the communication has somewhere faltered. To me, that has resulted in people not really knowing whether the money is there in those particular accounts, and B is who's utilizing that money is very important. So that I think is a way of looking at how the whole value chain, the backward integration of the whole DBT transfers is essentially well managed. I think to that extent there is work to be done. That's one big part. The second part of why the migrants is because there's just loss of livelihood. No, today it's unfortunately a very brutal, hard way of life. Now, if you don't have daily wages, how long can they sustain? And when we are shutting down, shops are shutting down, there is no foresight into how these laborers can be managed to be able to sustain their livelihood, or in terms of at least have 2 square meals a day. I think obviously people are getting very concerned. They want to go back to a place which really helps them to get to their grassroots. And they all go to their core, back to their villages where at least they can do some work and get some money or sustain their livings. I think both of these, if you look at the later, interestingly, I'll tell you one other thing. When you speak to some of the interviews and some of the channels that come across, I think it is very important for the political organization, the NGO organization, and the citizens at large to come together to help manage some of these crisis situations. Because it's all about, this is when the crisis management comes into play very significantly, because I would say 80% of the people would just get panicky today. They are in a panic mode because they don't have food to eat. They're in panic mode. This is where while NGOs and everyone are coming forward to feed them, it is all about saying, how do we get them the relief? How do we give them shelters to sustain for now, rather than pushing them around back into their respective villages? Now, the situation is going to get even worse, because as we get out of the pandemic situation and we come out of the lockdowns, and industries tend to restart, you will not have workforce to do your job. So what's going to happen? It's going to result in the output being decreasing significantly. You're going to have price increases because you're not going to have the right labor. So it's going to have those challenges come back.
True, absolutely. So I think from the challenges side, you did mention about communication, and I think that's true. But in a large and remote areas where migrants do come, how do we overcome this challenge of communication? Is there any thought on that, Mahesh, from you? So that you have been credited, and this is how you utilize the money.
So to me, when you look at the value chain, the whole chain of how direct benefits transfers happen, right? While I'm not an expert in it, but having spoken to quite a few of we've been in touch with a lot of the principal secretaries, because as a FIS, we are now back in a lot of countries. We run direct benefit transfers programs on behalf of governments. So we were sometime back, about 6 months ago, we were trying to engage with quite a few of the principal secretaries and chief secretaries. It's very interesting when you look at the value chain. Today, a lot of the distribution happens via the banks, right? Because the banks own the accounts. So a lot of these are happening there. But I don't think banks are in a business to be able to make sure that the endpoint communication and the ability of that individual account holder to ensure that he or she withdraws the money for his own benefits, that is not there. So I think, in my opinion, we need to bring in an aggregation player or a set of capability people players like an NGOs or a group of NGOs who essentially will be accountable to take this communication messaging down to the respective endpoint, right?
Yeah.
And that endpoint is essentially managed not by a bank, but is managed by some kind of a person or some kind of I would say intermediary who actually is able to manage the loop back mechanism better. So when I say loop back mechanism is, if I'm giving 500 rupees to a person, how do you verify that I'm paying it to that 500 people, that 500 rupees to the right person? So which is that NGO which essentially delivers it at the end of the day, or through the BC model, whichever way that money is getting handed over. That's very important. Today, I don't think that loop back is getting close. Today, the banks are depositing, sending a message. Whether the message gets delivered, does not get delivered, no one is tracking that message loop back. I think that's where we're missing the bus, in my view. So if you ask me for it to be a far more better success, I wouldn't call it a resounding success, but a better success. It is about the public and the state government. It is about the state banks, state-run banks, and the NGOs, as well as a lot of the forums coming together with probably a tech company or someone who can do it much more better to loop back this. That's very important. I think we are not effectively closing that mechanism well. I think, to me, that is what is causing this all heartburn today, and is actually going back to paint the government in a negative light. I think that we have to tweak that process. It is upon how we learn and keep tweaking this process to make it more effective. Today, if you look at some of the other countries where such a DBT program has been implemented, while the population here is obviously much more than where it is in other countries, but it's all about the public-private participation and combining it more effectively. I think that's very important.
Okay. Yeah, I think you said that. I think any of these, because of the large population, it requires a lot more careful handling. So you talked about identity, and do you think digital identity-based measures are sufficient, or you feel something more has to be done on this?
So to me, I think something more needs to be done. When you say digital identity, is today we're not, see, again, I go back to this fact is, when you say digital identity, how many people today look at lot of the migrant laborers. A lot of the migrant laborers may not necessarily have a feature for great phone sets and everything, right? They may call, they may go about with some very simplistic feature phone, or some may not have it. It's all about how you enable the whole process much more better, and how do you bridge that digital divide, I call it. The bridging the digital divide is very important. Today, one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing is talk to most of the folks who are on the road. They probably are not in a position to even fill their prepaid SIM cards, right? Today, all of them have run out of money. They're not even filling their prepaid SIM cards. But how do you really enable a message which at least goes into them, and you're able to do a feature phone-based approach? I think these are some. How do you bridge that into various languages? The one other place where I really, I always look upon today, technology enables you to deliver messages in various languages. This underlying scripts are there, capabilities exist. It's about the government and the various banks and the participants being able to communicate in a language that is better understood. This other area that I keep saying, Why can't you play a voice out to a message, right? Simple voicing out a message, because a lot of the times folks may not even read the message. They may not even be, they may be illiterate about it. But what they
Yeah.
can do is, when you go and click a particular message and it plays out a voice which says that in their language, then it's much more, people can hear it better, right? People can hear it better. It's very
Yeah.
interesting, I'll tell you, when we were implementing one of the large microfinance institutions, I'll just give you an example. And we were effectively being a door-to-door collections and door-to-door cash disbursements for their microfinance loans of 10,000 rupees or 15,000 rupees. You know what? One of the biggest feedback we got from the clients and hence from the bank was, I'm not convinced whether by giving them a receipt, by tearing off a receipt, is going to be good enough for them, because they don't understand that, they don't read that receipt well, they don't understand it, and just printing it English is not going to help anything.
No,
They will probably
absolutely.
tear it away. So we had to devise a very intelligent way of the moment the money is deposited or withdrawn, there is a voice which is played out, and the voice essentially then gives the person the reassurance what is there happening, and that's very important. And it could be used as a mechanism for you to store back into your records, because it's
Yeah.
very easy. So I think that those are the areas where we should be looking at it. And as I've told the last time also, we should go beyond biometric and look at it even from the retina authentication perspective, because that's easier for someone not to fool anyone. Right now, you can force someone from a
Yeah.
biometric or do what. But I think we should start investing in terms of shifting away to get a better authentication mechanism. I think that's also going to help it reaches the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think two things you touched upon, Mahesh: local language and that the POS machine or whatever the device they have should speak the local language. I have seen myself that is happening. Okay, how widespread it is a question that we have to kind of look at. But it does have both the receipt in the local language, and it also speaks the local language, because it's assumed that in case he doesn't know how to read, the villager, he's able to at least hear and understand. So that part I think is there. But like you said, India is all about massive population, diversity, local languages, remote areas, so far and flung areas. So yeah, it has to be taken across to all these places, which itself is a gigantic task. Uh, so coming back to the return of migrants, okay. Yeah, I think there are close to 100 crores migrants, okay, across India. 100, it could be 100 crores plus, okay. Uh, so where do you, once the pandemic is over, where do you think will be the challenges for the factories, and do you think automation will become a focal point for the factories?
See, it's a very interesting question to me. Will automation be available? Yes, automation will need to be will be adopted for sure.
Yeah,
Means you will need to move into the space, and automation will start becoming a necessity, because you will have to start creating more quality products, showcase that you are better off in a particular areas. All that is all good to have, but I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen to industries is, as they come out of the current COVID situation, you will not get, credit is not going to be easily available. Bottom line, I think, if we may say whatever, but at the end of the day, banks are not going to be easily lending to a lot of these
yeah,
MSME sectors easily. Now, credit is going to take a hit. So
yes,
which means, if credit is not going to easily available, you're not going to be able to invest. So the easiest way here to invest is by getting people and getting a machinery going, getting your revenue coming through the door, right? You have to start producing, you have to store. So I would say that in the first 5 to 6 months, immediately after, there will be a lot of moving of the migrants to come back.
yeah,
Uh, so you are going to see the reverse, maybe not in boats, but people will start to see from the nearby villages, nearby people starting to come in. Yes, the organizations will start getting more aware of how they need to be more hygienic, organize their workplace much better, so that you can allay some of the fears of the staff who come in. But I think the first 6 months to 1 year, a lot of the focus will be in getting labor back. Once you
Yeah.
start getting the business cracking, or business to start throwing out some money, we will then start to invest. So if you look at it, I would say the curve will be slightly different. You will have to invest first in people labor, while you start to invest in automation over a period of time. Eventually, I would say eventually in the next 3 years or 4 years, 3 years, I would say that automation will overtake. So as you start to grow, you will hold your labor and you will start investing more in automation. I think that's how things will span out. I'm not seeing it the other way around so easily.
Okay, that's nice. I like the answers, and I think one of the word you used is wooing the migrants. I think that's good to hear, because I think they have been the kind of population who have not have not got the right that they deserve. And I think there'll be a lot of wooing, and let's see how that turns out to be, to bring them back to
Or
the
they will
factories.
shift, or
Yeah.
factories will shift base. It's very simple. No, what I'm saying is, if you
Yes.
are having a MSME factory, at the end of the day, if you're not going to get labor, you will go to a place where you get the labor.
Where they get
you will
the
shift
yes,
machine.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's correct. I think decentralization of factories will happen, and I think more of factories will go to where the migrants are located. So that'll be a great thing to happen also. So I think three words I picked up from you, Mahesh: wooing, awareness, and getting, being aware that you have to treat and do things hygienically. I think these are things key. So I want to go back to one more question on the migrant, but before that, I have a message to all the participants in this call, whether they are here directly on this session or they are coming through some social media. You please go ahead and ask your questions. Put your questions in the Q&A, or raise your hand in case you want to ask a question directly to Mahesh. Both are welcome. Back office will help you to help you to ask the question also. Mahesh, coming back to the migrant and what we call as the safety net, that's a word that is that's been used very commonly. So what according to you could be done for those who were left out of the safety net, possibly due to digital disconnection?
Mm-hmm. See, to me, it's a bit of a, the way I have interpreted it is slightly different. I think this is where the government has to embark upon a reprogram to identify whom have they left out. Because today there has been enough and more. The government has touted it as a success. We also seeing it as a success. So if we have done it at about 94%, reaching out to the population, it's great. Maybe there is 10 to 12% who have not been covered under it.
Yeah,
I think government needs to, in my opinion, who alternate, who are the set of folks who are alternate to the government, who really engage with these kind of labor teams, right? I would say that these are NGOs. These are those people who are on the ground, who engage with a lot of such players, lots of such migrant population. In my opinion, there needs to be a far more concerted effort, very concerted effort, to start including a lot of these people into your Jandan program. And this time around, I think it is very important for the government to take a measured feedback in terms of what is it that they have missed out in this round. No, it's but natural. No such. I would laud the government for having done it in a 120 crore plus population, such a large 1.2 billion kind of a population. But more than anything, I would say that it is an extremely important ask on the government to say what feedback mechanisms do they adopt, where have they seen the gaps, and who are the players who can help them bridge it. See, today I have not seen anything which there are a lot of experts who come back and present challenges to the government. I have not seen a lot. I have not seen too many articles when I read up, in the various newspapers or whatever columnists, which essentially are saying that I'll put my hand up to say, can I help you bridge this divide?
Yeah.
Right. I think that is something which I'm very keen about. Now, today, as you've seen, we have lot of success stories, lot of such stories floating around, where NGOs go. They I've seen my own team members contributing to feed a lot of the poor people. They've come together and do it in Kolkata. They do it in Assam, where we have far-flung our ATM teams and everything. That's a very great stuff that they do. Great stuff. And really kudos to them. Yeah. However, I'm more concerned about how does government be able to get that back get this feedback and bridge that divide. That bridge divide has to be done by a set of intermediaries who are, I would say, known intermediaries, someone who can be made accountable, and someone who can help bring the team, bring all these people closer to the entire Jan Dhan program. I think that's very important, because if you're able to close that, I think as we move forward, the success of all these distribution will be much better. The success could be much better.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I think, Mahesh, I kind of figured out that I think we need to kind of, according to you, look at perhaps Jan Dhan version 2.0 and look at gaps and bridging those gaps, which kind of the gaps that happened in the first version. And these gaps are going to be there because, when you're dealing with such a massive program, there are bound to be gaps. And I think, so according to you, I think Jan Dhan should be taken ahead and the gaps have to be bridged. So good to know that, Mahesh.
It's always, in my opinion, it's always feedback mechanism that helps you. You never get it right the first time, but it is all about saying, how do you incrementally make sure you correct it and correct it for better. Now that's very important. We've seen the gaps, and COVID has presented us that unprecedented opportunity, I would say. Unprecedented opportunity for the government to recognize the gaps and to bridge that fast. And this is only, to me, this is not the end of story. It is only the start. So I would say that the faster you jump into it, the quicker you are able to get your action in place. It will be a success as we move ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So like we had this safety net as two words. There are two other, one more two words which are buzzing around. It's become a lot of, you can hear it. What's called the digital inequality. Okay. So how do we mitigate the impact of digital inequality, as it is called?
So maybe I think I'll start by asking you to explain digital inequality. Means it is all about, we talk about payments in the cities, we talk about payment capabilities and digital in this. But I think what is important for us as a responsible citizens and hence technologists is to understand how do we make this digital divide better? How do we bridge this better, right? It is all about, so how can we make it more simpler, right? The biggest challenge that we are all facing is the inability for us to make it more presentable, readable, and usable to not the folks like us, not the folks like who work for us, but it is to the larger population, right? Which means has to be very, very simplistic, and more importantly, easier for them to access that ability to either withdraw funds or to make payments, one of the two, and to know that they're there. So that's very important. So to me, I think we have to come out. I don't have a ready-made answer for it, honestly, but I think what's important is, that is where I always believe that how we can give it back to the society in a way is all about being a part of any of such simple technologies. I would call it simple technologies, which speaks a language that a large mass of India understand. Speak a language. Like, for example, could you Could you do voice-based recognition for payments? Could you do biometric-based authentications? Do you make accessibility at the PDS stores much more easier? Do
Yeah.
you be able to have a much more decentralized but controlled distribution of your funds? Why do you have to only keep it at the bank branches? Why could you not have bank branches be extended to, say, the office in the village, right? A small office in the village, or the Tahsildar's office, or whichever, to be able to them access and distribute it. So I think we
Yeah.
need to think of slightly more better models by which the utilization
Yeah.
and the adoption is much better, in my view. Now, they're big words, but at the end of the day, go and ask a farmer or someone who's in the farmland. It is always a 34. It is always a 80% will not know much, 20% know very well, right? So we have
Yeah.
to make sure that as long as the technology is enabling them and getting them included into it, I think we are success. Else we probably are not there.
Yeah. True. Thanks, Mahesh. So, we all know that there is going to be a wide ramification on the fallout of pandemic, and that's going to be there, and we all know that. And we also know that the government has to intervene frequently, and perhaps more frequently, to help in this social assistance to the underprivileged. What could probably be the options for the government to people kind of assistance, G2P?
So in my view, I think good. So I would say that it is not going to be always when G2P, to my view, is all about not just distribution of funds, but it is also distribution of utilities. It's about distribution of, so use the entire identity and make sure this identity is essentially well organized from a distribution of basic needs. For example, if you need to a PDS distribution, public distribution systems, in terms of your education, how do you start distributing this as packages to be able to help people get out of where they are? For
Yeah.
example, let's take a simple case. Now, for example, when you're distributing X amount of kilos of rice or
Yes.
some stuff. Now, is it just left to the PDS system to decide what they have to do? Then you know there are going to be leakages. There are going to be leakages. So I always believe that the identity, which is the Aadhaar, if that is going to be a core identity, the identity we have to invest in making that identity kind of a multi-usable card. Let's take the same Aadhaar card, for example. That Aadhaar card should become much more richer in terms of what it holds and what it can be used for. So whether I load it with some cash, which is centrally managed or I load it as some, I would say, e-money, which can be used for certain other purposes. They can't be used for buying, but they're effectively used in the PDS systems and everything. So you have one card which is much more feature rich, but which can be used by the government to manage its entire distribution outside of just money transmission. I think it should be used for providing necessities and everything. That's going to happen. So the government to people program, which covers more than the money, should have a much more stronger linkage, and that is very important today. I would say that whole G2P program needs to be far more comprehensive. Today, the way I'm seeing it, all of them are run by state governments. That state government, each of them bespoke run it the way they like it. There are guidelines, but how the distribution happens at the front end is not yet firmly established. Each one runs a program differently. I think that's where we have to all come together. Now, if you all come together and form it, you know which is the best practice and start incorporating it. It's not a 6 months program. It's a good 1 to 2 year program. But that's when you will find from the government to the person. It is much more better. and who are the intermediaries who can facilitate that much better is very important.
Absolutely. I think what you said, Mahesh, is as an out-of-box thinking, I would say, that we should make use of Aadhaar for many other things, so that you can do, it's not just identity, it's much more than that. You can do many more things with the Aadhaar card. I think that's a great eye-opener. Thanks, Mahesh. I think this could be something that people could look at, like, we can use the Aadhaar card because it's widely used, and make use of this more. Okay, great. Once again, participants, please send your questions to the Q&A. I think everyone is so glued to your talk, Mahesh, that they haven't been able
Hopefully,
to get time to. Hopefully,
it's a good discussion. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And so I'm requesting, and I want to thank people who have joined us from on the social media, particularly from YouTube. Please put your questions, raise your hand, and I'm sure we will be able to get across to Mahesh. So, Mahesh, my next question again to you would be, government would also give financial aid to small shopkeepers. Should they also give? That's a question, not should give. Should they also give aid to small shopkeepers, vendors, and such other entities? Typically in this, we have a lot of businesses running in MSMEs. They all are struggling, right? Every of those MSMEs struggling, doesn't know when he will start, which month he's going to start, and all the backlog that he has got with no cash flows coming in. Do you think government should come up with some financial aid to these people also, these businesses rather?
See, financial aid is financial aid. Okay, here is my two ways to it. They
Yes.
will need access to credit. I think the more importantly, they will need access to credit and the ability for them to be able to repay it over a slightly longer period at lower rate of interest. But that will kickstart, right? If you go and say that I'll give you a lakh of 50,000 rupees, go start your business, you are not clear whether that 50,000 rupees will be utilized to blow up tomorrow morning, or whether he or she will be in a position to be able to do it. So that'll be 50-50 success in my view. Rather,
Okay.
I would say that the government should work with the bank and the rating agencies, a lot of things, to be able to give it more as a lenient credit facility, and back it up with probably some more subsidies on the GST part of the story, because he again pays it on the front end.
Yeah.
So
true.
if he does it, if both of these come in combined,
Yeah.
I think there is a good 60 to 70% chance that people will jump in back. At the end of the day, they will all want to get money into the door, start working through. So once they get access to money, credit, they know they have to pay back. That's very important, right? And at least then there is people who are interested, and it will be to the people who are interested first.
Yeah.
If there is someone who's really keen to take that leverage to get into the business again, will do it. Now, if it is backed by saying that who are taking that interest, I will give you a 2 months lower GST rates or whichever. Today, the government makes a good killing on GST. So
Yeah.
if they are able to make that better, I would
Yeah.
say that as holiday I wouldn't say they should do away with GST, because that's harmful to the government. I think you should make sure that it is far better managed for about 3 to 4 months or a 6-month period. I think both sides will help any businesses do it better. They will come out of the curve. You will not have the same set of numbers of people jumping. You will have reduced. But I think whoever comes into the fray will work harder and will come out of the fray. I think it will be like 6 to 1 year, 1 to 1.5 years will be a time frame where I would say 60% of the industry should come back, should start on its journey back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's good answer, good comment that you make, Mahesh. I think there has to be something done for the small shopkeepers and vendors to reboot and start again. So, like I said, this series of ours, which we have every week from Monday to Friday, is getting a lot of traction, and now we see a lot of press people coming into this. So I have the first question to you, Mahesh, from ETV. Mr. Tripathi is going to ask you a question, and I'm opening up the line for him to ask you a direct question. So, Mr. Tripathi, please unmute yourself and you can ask the question directly to Mahesh.
Very good noon, Mr. Ramamurthy. This is Krishnanand Tripathi. I am calling from ATV Bharat. I just wanted to ask you one thing. Immediately after the announcement of lockdown by Prime Minister on March 24, nobody could anticipate that millions of migrants will walk on foot for hundreds of kilometers. It clearly shows that there is a lack of confidence in the government machinery, that the government or civil society will be able to take care of them. In a society like us, how do you think that we can restore that confidence that they can come back again to the cities and they can join back the industry?
So, yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Tripathi. I think here is where I have. So, why did the government order for a sudden lockdown? I think, was it just that someone did it out of sheer need? I think there was a necessity. No, there was an urgent need for us to control the spread. So I think the decision taken to enforce a lockdown was imperative. And I agree with it. Yes, there was a gap. There was an execution gap in terms of understanding how the migrant laborer need to be managed, right? This is where I always believe that when you have such large migrant force and which is skewed from a certain part of the country to another part of the country where the money is always there, right? And the money is always there. Yeah. And there is a lot of traction happening. I think this is where the government, as I was speaking earlier, Mr. Tripathi, has to work very closely with a lot of the non-government entities like NGOs. I think that is where they have to enlist their support and the political parties. Today, each one is then playing a blame game. That's not helping. So everyone is just trying to throw each other under the bus, which is not a good, healthy situation. These people need help, and the government should actually bring about far more immediate engagement with the NGOs. I think they are there. That's what they are out there for, right? If the government is able to give a lot more assurance to these migrant laborers, look at this fact, right, Mr. Tripathi, look at this. A lot of these laborers suddenly landed up either in Bombay and BKC, right? They all landed up in Bandra, BKC complex, in a lot of these places. Why? Because someone just spread a message saying tomorrow you will get a train to go. But at the same time, if the government had actually come together and say, guys, don't, okay, we will help you come here, go here, we'll feed you, get the NGOs, get all the NGOs together, start helping them feed, and then say, okay, we will have you shelters, we'll give you some shelters and we'll help you move across. I think that somewhere the government got very, they didn't collaborate well. I wouldn't think the governments, each of the government entities collaborated well. And that's caused this whole, I would say, panic situation. That's all I will call it, Mr. Tripathi. But I would say it is temporary in nature. It is a lesson learned, and we should just learn from that lessons and not let it prolong more. I think what worries me is why is it prolonging, and that is where we need to have the government respond to through a lot of these intermediary organizations.
Mr. Ramamurthy, I have a second question, if I am permitted.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
We have seen that Prime Minister launched this massive financial inclusion program, Jan Dhan program, in 2014, and it came handy when the government was to transfer a lot of amount through DBT. What are the lessons that we can learn from this DBT transfer under the PM Garib Kalyan scheme, and going forward, how it can be further improved? And are there any better global examples, as per your knowledge, that comes to your mind, which we can replicate within the country?
So to me, I think, like I've mentioned earlier in this program, the success of what really defines success when you transfer DBTs, right? It is all about is the person at the end of the day who's supposed to be receiving the money, does he know that he's got the money in his account? Does he know does he have the ability to withdraw the money? That's very important, right? Today, the government, in a way, needs to bring in the right set of people somewhere in between to be able to make sure that the money that is distributed or through these programs are essentially reaching that right end customer and the end citizen. So it is not just a bank who can do it. The bank is not in a position, or it is not in their capability to ensure that it has reached that last mile in hand. That's where the government has to have a much more robust feedback mechanism, which is not that closure mechanism of making sure it is properly reaching the end customer is missing a bit. I think that's where I would say the government has to learn from its mistakes, because the distribution, it is always like from the state government, from the central to state to the various accounts is good, but it is not foolproof. I think that foolproofness has to be built by the government. And there are multiple avenues to it. I'm not the expert in that topic, but just my interaction, I can tell you there are much more areas that the government needs to work upon. Now, your second question, which talked about, sorry, pardon me, your second question.
My question, are there any better examples anywhere out there in the world?
Well, there are examples. No, even in the US, whether how they distribute for unemployment benefits and everything, there are very robust examples of how they do it in some of these countries. Very robust. I think that's where some of the lessons that is there to be learned and delivered. Now, I know one will always come back and say that India's population is so high that not everything will be a success. But I think that's where we have to learn from where even they have learned, they have corrected their mistakes and try and apply it to our environment. Now, the one thing that I probably like about Modi is that he's very firm about rolling out new projects. But the flip side of it is that projects get rolled out at pace that the feedback loop and recorrection of that is probably what suffers. I think if we are able to get that right, it will be a great success story for Mr. Modi and his government.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Tripathi. I hope Mahesh has answered, and thanks, Mahesh. That was very good insight into the questions that he asked. So I want to open another question to be asked directly. I think Tyag wants to ask a question. Tyag, unmute yourself and please ask.
Hi. See, my question is, there is always a challenge we hear about the last mile connectivity and not able to reach the common man, or we call it the beneficiary in the direct benefit transfers. My question is, the government also has what is called common service centers. If you heard, the CSC, there are close to 150,000 centers which are run by private entrepreneurs in the villages. So there is already a sort of investment available. So to bridge that digital divide, don't you think, Mahesh, the stakeholders should reach out to these 150,000 common service centers for bridging the digital divide?
No, we should, but how? So, Tyag, the question will be, how effective have these CSCs been? Now, it goes back to the same old question, right? If the CSCs have been very effective, then we should never have these migrant laborers struggling. We should not have the digital divide that we are all talking about. Then it should be working in harmony, right? So something is missing at here, right? Am I right? So something is missing in this whole game plan. Now, there is leakage in the overall process, or there is inefficiency in the process. These are two separate streams. So one needs to identify what is causing that. Now, you and me could debate it till a lot of time. You and me could debate it, but that's not the end of the whole thing. I think we need to, that's where I think getting the government as well as the lot of the private sector and the tech sector and the private sector together to help in such situations should be great. Like, each of us have contributed significantly to CSR, but to be able to say the CSR is one part of the story, try and help me bridge this divide. I think a lot of people will come in, because it is not just a business opportunity, but a lot of us are here to say, how do we contribute back to the society? So happy to do if any of these can come in. That's what we've been going around telling the government organizations.
Thanks, Mahesh. So Mahesh, if we were to ask you a question that could you come up with, let's say, maybe top 3 recommendations to increase the effectiveness of government to people payment infrastructure? Is there any kind of recommendations you would have?
See, government to people infrastructure, the infrastructure wise, I would say that we need to look at a few areas. I'm thinking of the hat right now is in terms of, I'm saying is all about, enhanced people to people communication about how it happens. Like Jags was mentioning, is it the CSCs which really do it? 2 is about the feature phone. How do you communicate more over voice rather than just this thing? How do you bring the involvement of a lot of the distribution systems, right? The PDS and all of that, which is non-cash benefits. How do you make them all integrated into one Aadhaar-centric card-based approach? I think those are a lot of ideas coming. We can list about 15, 20 of those ideas. But effectively, it's all about what does the government agree to make it much more useful? Now, like for example, each of us, why can't you have large corporations contributing to enable the Aadhaar, make it successful, right? From a technology, from a implementation perspective, and divert a lot of the CSR to make this. And in such times, I think that's most important.
Okay. So, so go ahead, Mahesh. I'm sorry.
No, I'm good with it. I'm just saying that ideas could be multiple, but it is all about starting small, seeing whether the success comes into it, and then continuing to change it.
Okay. So, Mahesh, we have the first question also coming from YouTube, and he asks, his question is, what are your view on banking models such as India Post? And there are some private players also, some small footprint branch they have. So do they help in bridging the digital divide?
I think from a mandate perspective, they do get into that. They do try and bridge the digital divide. But again, I would say that if you ask a bank, what is he or she there in business for? They are there to, at the end of the day, if they don't make money and they don't make profits, they are not in business. So I think which is where I would say a bank or whoever all these who have the reach should better collaborate with far more, I would say, entities which are not there for making profit. I think those are the entities. For me, that there is a huge sector there which essentially should be able to focus on getting this bridge, this divide, this bridge better. To me, I think just leaving it to a bank will only be useful from a banking perspective and enabling that, ensuring that the cash part of the story is done, the withdrawal and this. But everything else that happens around it, the entire communication, the entire engagement with the end citizen has to be done by a different team. That cannot be just done by these banks. And that's where we actually have the problem today.
Okay. So, India Post has branches far and wide. And I think one of the reasons why India Post was brought into the entire mainstream, to bring into the mainstream of financial assistance, mainstream of financial delivery, was because of its reach. I think it's over almost 3 years or so, plus maybe. You think it has lived its kind of strength it can do, or there's still a lot of things to be can do?
I can only say they can do better.
They can say better. Okay. All right. So I have another question from the participant. What can be the impact on workforce connected to the industries having long-term effects? So he's asking about industries like travel, tourism, and hospitality industry post this COVID. I mean, what, according to you, are their prospects, or will they start, not start?
A difficult question, but yes, the reality is that you're going to have challenges. The reality is for tourism, for a lot of tourism, hotel industry, I think the return back to normalcy is going to be anywhere between 18 to 24 months, if not more. I don't think they are going to be that easy get back. because the fear psychosis is going to live longer than them coming back. So it's going to take time. In the meantime, a lot of these people will find alternative employment. You have to find employment. So which means that people will do jobs which they would never have imagined they would have done before, right? So they would take up pay cards, they will pick up jobs to sustain and just get their life going. So you will have a lot more people doing contractual jobs, lot more doing moving away from doing different, I would say, crazy jobs. I would say that sometimes you would not have imagined someone who probably was in a hotel industry starting to do work as a teacher. You could have very varied, because people will do anything and everything to survive first. In the next 12 to 14 months is going to be survival. It's only after survival, then when industry starts to revive itself, I would say that people will start going beyond. Today, I see that as a big issue. This cycle, to come out of the cycle, is going to be tough. And but yes, if what India government can really help itself, if we are able to attract more industries, as we call it, attract more industries, setting up shop in India, get a big manufacturing push, give stimulus in terms of setting up large manufacturing hubs, I think the acceleration from 24 months to 18 months could be there. If not, it is going to be even further.
Okay. All right. We have almost come to the end of our session, Mahesh. Just a last question in case, let's say, assume that there is a regulator or a government person listening to you. What could be your one or two suggestions going forward post this pandemic?
I'd say be prepared for more such pandemics first, because I wouldn't call it, it's a lesson learned. Means it is something that all of us have realized how important life is and how important it is too. So it's all about the government being ready for multiple of these, because this is not the end of story. And in which case, it's all about how you bring on board more players into helping the government make it happen. They're making sure that every person in this value chain is far more accountable to enable to be sustainable. At the end of the day, I have bigger challenges in terms of you say migrant laborer. There is even simple housemaids, drivers, all of them. You name it. All of us are going to be in some difficult boat. So government has to know where it has to spend its priorities. I think that's very important. Now, national highways are not priority for now. Now, priority is divert a lot of these into making sustainable life first, and then go back into doing a lot of these.
Thank you, Mahesh. So thanks, Mahesh. That was a wonderful insight into. I think we covered a lot of topic, right? We covered, we went from G2P to Aadhaar to making it more versatile than what it is there. We talked about migrants, the migrants issue, the migrants coming back, and Mahesh used a very interesting word. He said, "How are we going to woo the migrants back?" I think that's going to unfold in the days to come. Mahesh, I just want to once again thank you a lot for coming over and talking to us. And I'm sure all the participants have heard good things about the views that you have expressed. Thank you. And we look forward to welcome you once again. Thanks, Mahesh.
Thank you. Thanks. You. Really appreciate the time and the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.